Happy Election Day to all those out there. And after a week off, we are back. It is Tuesday, November 7th, 2023. I'm Brandon Lewis. To my right of my screen is the one and only Josh Ungar to the max. Josh, we got to know before we dive into the show tonight, how was your vacation, man?
The Pacific Northwest is absolutely amazing. I absolutely loved Seattle. Portland was nice, but Seattle was just awesome. I loved everything about it.
Make sure you stay tuned for an article coming in the next few weeks from Josh on that on VoltageLive.com. Of course, we are officially in collaboration with the one and only Voltage Live. Before we get started tonight, you can follow us on social media. We're on Twitter at Rings Champion, Instagram at Rings Champion, Facebook at Rings Champion 216. Subscribe to us right here on YouTube at Championship Rings 216. Before we get into all of the NFL Week 9 stuff, before we get into everything NBA, before we get into the Rangers winning their first World Series in franchise history, my man Josh Ungar has something to say, and Josh, the floor is yours.
All right, so on a recent episode of First Things First, hosted by Kevin Wildes, Nick Wright, and Chris Broussard, who is the man I'm calling out, as you can see, they were talking about James Harden being traded to the Los Angeles Clippers, which is a topic Brandon and I will get into later in this show. During that conversation, specifically about Harden's usage in LA with the Clippers, Broussard used the term, "Is the man retarded?" So let me just say straight off the bat, that word, retarded, is my trigger word. I hate it when people use that word. It is insulting. It is degrading. It is offensive, repulsive. I could go on and on and on. But that word is just straight up, it grinds my gears. It causes, for me, a major reaction. And Nick Wright came back at him, I should say, and say, you shouldn't use that word, but sure. And it didn't. And then later in the program, Broussard apologized by referencing his cousin who had recently died and had mental differences or something. I don't remember the exact phrasing. But his apology felt so disingenuous and insincere. And personally, I think Chris Broussard should have been suspended for at least 2 episodes of First Things First. That would have sent the message to people that it doesn't matter if you're a high-profile sports analyst on a show like First Things First. It doesn't matter if you're an average person. You cannot use the word retarded. Like I said earlier, it is offensive, insulting, degrading, repulsive. I could use many other words there. It should not be part of our language anymore. It's 2023. Why are we still having to even have this conversation? So, Chris Broussard, you should not be allowed on First Things First for at least 2 episodes. I truly and fully believe that.
And obviously, I know how much the topic means to you as well, Josh. And, I agree with everything you said, but I wanted to give you the floor because I know how passionate you are about the subject. From that subject to another. We were not here last week on Championship Rings to discuss our thoughts on this game. But if you know me, and if you listen to my podcast, Brandon's World, which does in cooperation with Voltage Live, you can check me out every Tuesday and Thursday on Brandon's World on the Brandon's World YouTube channel. Link is in the description of this podcast. I said On my Thursday show, I was best betting the Philadelphia Eagles -3 to cover and defeat the Dallas Cowboys. I said they would win by anywhere between 4 and 7 points. I said Dak Prescott would play really well. I said the difference in the game would be Philadelphia's defensive line late would make a play, or if they were down to win the game, Jalen Hurts would make the play to win the game. That's almost exactly what happened. From my perspective as a Philadelphia Eagles fan, we are 8-1. In my opinion, we're about to talk about who the best team in the AFC is. You can put my team up against any team in the National Football League. We have the best offensive line. We have the best defensive line in football. We will be in every single game we play because of that. And Jalen Hurts, who almost tore his ACL if it wasn't for the brace on his knee at the end of the first half, came out in the second half and put together back-to-back touchdown drives to pretty much essentially win the game if it wasn't for a couple, ticky-tack pass interference calls that got Dallas down to the 5-yard line, and that mess ensued at the end of the game. We know how divisional rivalry games are. We know how these Eagles-Cowboys games are. They are always close, and at the end, the Eagles have Jalen Hurts. They have Nick Sirianni. They have a great offensive and defensive line. They have A.J. Brown. They have Devontae Smith. They have an unstoppable brotherly shove. And unless you play perfect against Philadelphia, you're more than likely going to lose. Against 90% of the NFL teams on Sunday, the game Dallas played, they probably would have won that game. Not against Philadelphia. That's how good this Eagles team can be, Mr. Ungar.
So I didn't get to watch the full game because I was driving back from Chicago that day. But I was able to catch the fourth quarter, which with Cowboys-Eagles, it basically comes down to the fourth quarter. So I saw basically all that I needed to see right there. But I was on the treadmill today, and I was able to watch most of the first half. And obviously, with Cowboys-Eagles most of the time, it comes down to those late possessions. What do you do with them? I'll tell you what, though. When Philadelphia forced Dallas to go 3-and-out on their first possession, and then the Eagles come back and score a touchdown on their first possession, I think that was actually a big turning point in this game. I know it was the first possession. I know it was early, but, coming into this, we all heard, Dallas is on the same level as Philadelphia, and, Dallas can close the gap on the Eagles and all this and that. Like, you heard that same type of thing, right?
Correct.
So I think that's why I'm saying Philadelphia getting that 3-and-out on Dallas on the first possession and then coming back and scoring a touchdown on their first possession was a big part of the reason they won. Again, that's not to discredit what the Eagles did late or what the Cowboys did to get back into the game, because I do understand that. And obviously, if Dallas's tight end, I think his name was Schoonmaker, had moved in a couple more inches, he would have had the touchdown. And if Dak Prescott actually knew where the boundary was, he might have been able to stay inbounds and convert that 2-point conversion. Of course, we'll never know. But I will tell you this. The Eagles' offense is going to have to change now because of the loss of Dallas Goedert. I think it's going to be on Devontae Smith, actually, to really step up. And I'll tell you why. Without Dallas Goedert, I think defenses are going to start paying more attention to A.J. Brown because they know that A.J. is going to be the primary focus now. So that means Devontae Smith is going to get that single coverage. Can he step up and make those big plays when Jalen Hurts goes to him? He has that capability. There's a reason he won the Heisman Trophy, for crying out loud, when he was at the University of Alabama. And he has shown that during his time in Philadelphia, but now he's really going to be thrust into the spotlight.
So if you remember last year, Goddard was also hurt. I believe it was on that Monday night game, the one game Philly lost at home when Jalen Hurts was the starter. Uh, on that weird play that should have been a penalty on Washington, but they ended up stripping the ball out and Goddard's shoulder got ripped out. Very similar injury. The Eagles' passing game struggled more without Dallas Goddard. It's not that Jack Stoll is incapable, or it's not that Grant Katera, who was out this past week due to a concussion. They're very good tight ends. They're just not as dynamic as Dallas Goddard. I agree with you to a sense that I think Devontae Smith is going to be the one to step up. I could also see Zachulius in the slot being more of a better option. But I also think now, especially when you look at the opponents that they're going to face, Kansas City, Buffalo, San Francisco, Dallas again, specifically with the Kansas City and Buffalo games, I think those are two defenses that you can run the football on. And so look for potentially DeAndre Swift, Kenneth Gainwell, who looked even better against Dallas than he did the previous week against Washington. Look for Philly to potentially get the running game back going again. Because the one thing about this Philadelphia team, and Greg Olsen made it very clear, and I agree with him on the broadcast Sunday, this team is a pass-first team. Everybody thinks Philadelphia is a run-first team because they get all these rushing yards and the brotherly shove, but they are a pass-first team. But what makes them so dangerous is there are some weeks where Jalen Hurts can drop back 30, 35 times, and A.J. Brown can for 125 monster game. There are other games can hand the ball off to DeAndre Swift and Kenneth Gainwell and get literally 300 yards rushing. It makes it very hard for defenses to prepare, and that's why I keep saying, if Philadelphia does not turn the football over, and I'm not just saying this in the Eagles, I'm saying it as an unbiased NFL fan. If Philly does not turn the ball over, it's almost impossible to beat them unless you do what Washington did last year, which is run the ball at 2-3 yards apace, sustain 9-10 minute drives, and don't give the ball back to that offense. Because Philadelphia very strategically plays every down like they have 4 downs to get 10 yards instead of 3, which is a real advantage.
I mean, you look at last year's Super Bowl between the Eagles and the Chiefs, you're talking about not turning the ball over. What was the real turning point in that game? It was Jalen. It was the fumble
play, and it was a fluke play. Like a lot of Jalen's turnovers have been this year. He just drops the snap, and it was really the difference. I wouldn't say it was the turning point because the Eagles were still 20-10 at the half, but it was the difference in the score of the game.
That's part of the reason why I'm saying it was the turning point.
Well, turning point in the game to me is the second half. When you have a big turnover, the wing shift. Philadelphia was still 20-10 at halftime. But in retrospect, obviously, that again, fluky turnover. And again, I really think that's the only way to beat Philadelphia is you either have to force them into 3 turnovers or you have to literally do what Washington did and run the ball at 2-3 yards a clip and make sure they don't get the ball back.
So let me ask you this. We saw Seattle get absolutely bone rushed by Baltimore.
But what about Geno Smith? How's Geno Smith looking?
A couple weeks ago, we saw Detroit get absolutely wrecked by Baltimore. Okay. San Francisco hasn't been playing great. I mean, yeah, they were on their bye week, but prior to that, they had lost 3 straight. So would you say that Dallas has now put itself as the number 2 team in the NFC?
Hold on. I want to take this moment real quick because week 1, this man, Josh Ungar, said, there's no way Dallas is better than San Francisco. They're not better than Detroit. They're not better than Seattle. And now he's asking me if I think Dallas is the number 2 team in the NFC. And my answer to you is what I've been telling you for the last about 3 weeks. The answer is no. And the reason is because we are going to forecast it. And it's not about the wins and losses every week. It's really about your team reputation. Do you have the players? You're going to get it right. Do you have the coach? Do you have the personnel? San Francisco, I don't even care if they lose to Jacksonville this week. I don't care if they lose 4 straight. They're going to win the NFC West. They're probably going to be the number 2 or 3 seed in the NFC. Whoever wins that NFC North or West are going to be the 2 or 3 seed, because whoever wins the South is going to be the 4 seed, because that division's a mess. So by virtue of that, I think San Francisco and Detroit are more similar than San Francisco and Philadelphia. I give the edge to San Francisco because of the fact that I don't think Jared Goff can play a good team outdoors, regardless if it's California or not. And I think Dallas, the only team that match up well against Philadelphia because it's their division rival. I don't think they match up particularly well with Detroit, and we know they don't play well against San Francisco.
So on that point, Dallas is now 0-2 against probable playoff teams this season on the road. They lost at San Francisco 42-10. We talked about that game at length. And they lost last week against your Eagles 28-23. I get it. Both of those games were on the road, but given the way you were just laying out the NFC playoffs, Dallas is probably going to have to go on the road and play either a Philadelphia, a San Francisco. If the matchup ends up right, maybe a Detroit. Dallas has to show me that they can go on the road and beat these really good teams. Do you agree with that?
I agree, and I'm actually going to hold that conversation because speaking of showing us who the good teams are, we've gone a little bit over on the Philadelphia topic for a good reason. We got to jump to the AFC because there are a lot of good teams in the AFC, obviously. Kansas City, Cincinnati, Baltimore, Jacksonville. I mean, the Chargers are not, but they have a fantastic quarterback in Justin Herbert. So
horrible head coach in Brandon Staley.
And a horrible head coach in Brandon Staley. So, Josh, the question on the screen, who in your mind right now as we head into week 10, the best team in the AFC?
Well, I can tell you it's not the Miami Dolphins because they've only beaten bad teams. They can't win against good teams. So it is not Tua and it is not the Dolphins. As much as it pains me to say this, because we are playing them this week in Baltimore, but look at what the Ravens have done over these past few weeks. They absolutely manhandled the Detroit Lions, who came into Baltimore with all this hype, and everybody was riding the Detroit Lions train. And then, this week or last week, however you want to say it, Seattle comes in. Everybody's thinking the Seahawks are this great team, or I shouldn't say great team, but really good.
Well, you thought that.
Okay, fair enough. But you get my point, though. And the Ravens just said, yeah, no. They outscored the Seahawks and Lions by a combined total of 75-9. I mean, think about that. And they get big days from Zay Flowers or some of their other receivers. And honestly, how do they keep finding these running backs? Do they just find them on the scrapyard or something?
Because it's what I've been telling you about the running back position now. It's probably what our 8th show now, and we have this conversation every single week. The running back position is the least most important position on the football team. It's least important than punter. You can substitute a running back in the right system, in the right offensive line, like Baltimore has done, like Philadelphia has done, like Cincinnati will eventually do for Joe Mixon. You can argue what Miami has done. And as long as you get the same amount of production by using multiple backs, by the way, New England did this for years with the likes of James White, LeGarrette Blount, Corey Dillon, among others. And then there's teams like Tennessee that don't have a quarterback, and there's teams like the Giants that think they had to pay their running back because they don't have a quarterback. Nonetheless, I agree with you that the Baltimore Ravens are the best team in the AFC, but I'm going to put a perspective out there that not a lot of people have said. I think Baltimore, and I told you this going back to the start of the season, I thought Baltimore was really good. I also think they faced two teams in Detroit and Seattle that are both flawed at the quarterback position. One in Detroit, I'm sorry, I told you this a couple weeks ago. As much as I love Jared Goff and I like him more than you do, he can't play outside against good teams. He just can't historically. He struggles on the road in less than perfect California conditions. This is what Jared Goff is. And I kept telling you for weeks and for weeks and for weeks, Geno Smith is not the answer at quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks. He has struggled ever since the calendar turned from September to October. He's giving the ball away like he did back in his Jets days. And you were at that game in Seattle a couple weeks ago, and the Browns with PJ Walker should have beaten Seattle in Seattle of what should have been an easy Seahawks win when they went up 17-0 in the first quarter. Seattle's not as good as everybody thinks they are. Detroit is good. They're not great. And so I think Baltimore just kind of exposed both those teams a little bit. And I also think it's hard to play Lamar Jackson the first time you see him. I think the real test for Baltimore is going to be a game that's coming up not this week, because I think there's a good chance that they do really well against the Browns next week when they take on the Bengals in Baltimore, Thursday night football with a healthy Joe Burrow. Because I'm going to tell you something. If something happens to Lamar Jackson, we all know his injury history. We know Kansas City's going to always be there. But Cincinnati, and I said this when they started 1-3, when they got blown out against Tennessee, I said they're about to go on a run. And look who they have knocked off. They have knocked off your Seattle Seahawks. They have knocked off the San Francisco 49ers, and they have knocked off the Buffalo Bills. And I don't care what that score was Sunday night. That game was not close. Cincinnati dominated the game throughout, and I think they are poised because they want another AFC championship game, whether it's in Arrowhead or in Cincinnati, because we both know, when we talk about Baltimore right now, it's likely one of the teams that's going to be in that AFC championship game is the Kansas City Chiefs, because the Chiefs just find a way every year, and we can't count them out no matter how bad they look right now.
And I agree with you. I just want to touch on the Buffalo Bills super quick because you brought them up. I think their window is closed. I really do.
Ooh. You know, I'm going to bring this up.
Go.
Because I brought it up at the end of last year's playoff game, and I'm not 2020 hindsight. You can check the tape. You can go on Brand's World. I said it immediately after they lost that divisional round game. I said if I was in charge of the Bills, I would have fired Sean McDermott right then and there.
Interesting.
You know how I feel about defensive coaches. You know how I feel about how they have a ceiling. And I like Sean McDermott. He comes in the Andy Reid tree. I think he's a very smart coach. He got Buffalo out of the domes rooms into, playoff / fringe Super Bowl contending status. In the NBA, a lot we talk about this, right? How you need to get a coach for a young team, but he's not the coach to win you the championship.
Right.
I think it's the situation here in Buffalo. McDermott got them out of it. They had Brian Dable. They had Josh Allen. And the minute Dable left town, because Allen needs an offensive coach to sort of rein him in, and we all know what Dable did last year with Daniel Jones, I think Buffalo just knows we're behind Cincinnati. We're behind Kansas City. Now we're arguably behind Baltimore. They're going to be in every game because Josh Allen is just Josh Allen. He's a top 3 watch in the league. But I think that they need to change philosophies. Go get an offensive-minded coach. Let go of, some of those safeties and linebackers you're spending all that money to, and go get a damn offensive line, because James Cook is a decent enough running back. They can't run block to save their lives. And that's the problem with Buffalo. They are back to Josh Allen Superman, and they try to run the ball, and they can't.
I agree with you. I think part of the problem also with Buffalo is, like, while I agree with you that they rely on Josh Allen too much, when they are in their passing game, which is what, like you were just saying, they rely heavily on, they go to Stephon Diggs like on every single play. Yes,
I'll say this: Dalton Kincaid is starting to develop a tight end. I think when they get Dawson Knox back, they're going to be in a lot more 12 personnel set, which is 2 tight ends, 1 back.
sure.
Gabe Davis does have good games. Now, he didn't, I don't even remember him at the game Sunday. It's like, did he disappear? I don't even remember him on the field.
That's what I'm saying, though.
But Gabe Davis has the ability in some games. Part of that, again, maybe play calling. Is it Ken Dorsey? But I just, there's something off with Buffalo. Before we move on to our next topic, I want to quickly address Miami because I know you think they're frauds. I'm going to throw a different word at you. You know what the Dolphins are? They're a boxer. They're a knockout punch boxer. And let me explain how.
Explain this. I'm interested.
They have a Mike Tyson quality to them that Buffalo had a couple of years ago, the year they lost to Kansas City in the divisional round in that incredible playoff game. When Miami gets a lead on you, they can blow you out by 50. When they get ahead and their speed and their guys and they're running around and they're showboating, when they get up 10-0 on you, you're done. That's it. Game over. They're going to run away and score 50 points. When they're behind, when you take away Tua's first read and you force them to slowly, methodically move their way down the field, they can't do it because they're too impatient. I don't think Miami's necessarily a fraud. I just think they're built way too much on speed, and they can't beat good teams on the road. They're a lot like Dallas to me, where they're very good at home. They could beat any team on any given Sunday, and they're big front runners. But when they trail, when they're behind, when it's a big game on the road, that's where they struggle. By the way, they shut out Kansas City in the second half, and if it wasn't for that wild defensive play where they forced a fumble and they learned it back and Kansas City took it back, Miami had a chance to win that game in Germany on a neutral field against Kansas City. So I went away from that saying Miami's got problems, but I think they're getting better. And I don't want to call them frauds. I don't think they can necessarily win a Super Bowl unless they get some luck going their way. But I don't think they're these punching bags or these frauds that everybody thinks they are.
You know what's interesting is throughout this conversation, we talked about Baltimore. We talked about Kansas City a little bit. We talked about Cincinnati. We talked about Buffalo. And you just talked about Miami. Who did we not talk about, though?
It's Jacksonville, and it's because I don't trust their defense. And I don't think they have enough big-time star weapons to go up with a Cincinnati, to go up with a Baltimore, to go up with Kansas City, because we've seen they can't match up with Kansas. For whatever reason, they don't match up well with Kansas City, and their defense does not have the pass rush or the star-studded names that I think could, lock down a Burrow and a Chase or, even a Tyreek Hill if they were to match up with Miami. That's my concern for Jacksonville, and I think that they'll win the division and they'll get a high seed, but I think they're a year away. I think they need another pass rusher, and I think they need another corner.
Okay. Well, we're going to find out about Jacksonville because they host both Baltimore and Cincinnati and
San Francisco this week.
That game should have been flexed into Sunday Night Football instead of Jets Raiders. Ugh.
Well, that's a different conversation. We got to move on. We got to talk about this real quick. The Las Vegas Raiders finally have done what I've been preaching for them to do ever since the end of last season. That's to move on from Dave Ziegler, Josh McDaniels, the head coach. And I don't like defensive-minded head coaches. But I got to tell you what, Antonio Pierce, former player, New York Giant. Usually defensive-minded head coaches are really good in these situations. When you're underdogs, when you don't expect the team to succeed. Yes, they did play the lowly New York Giants and Danny DeVito came in, but that was still the best Raiders performance we've seen ever since Rich Bisaccia took over the team 2 years ago. I gotta tell you, it gives the Raiders some life here for me, and I'm gonna throw this out at you, Josh, real quick. In order to win in the National Football League, we know this is what you need. You need a great coach, preferably on the offense side of the ball, or you need a great offensive coordinator. You need a quarterback. You need a left tackle. Vegas has left tackle. Check. You need a pass rush. Vegas has it. Check. You need weapons on the offense side of the ball. Vegas has it. Check. To me, if Vegas goes out and they get a Ben Johnson, and they're going to have one of these top picks in the draft, we talk about college football all the time on this show, they're going to get one of the top quarterbacks. If you hit on the coach and the quarterback here in Vegas, you have Davante Adams, you have Hunter Renfrow, you have Michael Meyer, you have Colton Miller, you have Max Crosby. There are building blocks here for this team. This is not a terrible job, not to mention you get to live in Las Vegas.
When are teams going to learn that it doesn't work to just skin the New England Patriots alive? Like, it didn't work when the Giants hired Joe Judge. It didn't work when the Detroit Lions hired Matt Patricia. And it did not work when the Raiders hired Josh McDaniels. I don't get it. Why do teams think it's going to work if you take someone from the Patriots? It's not that simple that, oh, I got someone from the Patriots. We're going to start playing like the New England Patriots. No, it doesn't work like that. But I do want to address what you were just saying about Davante. I don't think Davante's going to be there for the long term in Vegas. Think about why Davante wanted to go to the Raiders. It's because his buddy, Derek Carr, was there. Well, then what did the Raiders do? They cut Derek Carr, and now he's down in the bayou playing for the New Orleans Saints. And, you know, you're getting all these comments from Davante now, like, I don't know. I'm not the one who controls the offense and all this and that.
That was all McDaniels. There was a clear revolt against Josh McDaniels. I don't know if you saw the report Jay Glazer had on Sunday on Fox NFL Sunday. Essentially, there was a players' meeting where the players were allowed to rip into McDaniels, and they did. And McDaniels was so hurt by it that Antonio Pierce, McDaniels let him give a speech, and the players bought into his speech. And then, Pierce was talking about how, the 2007 Giants, so they took down the Patriots. And McDaniels got so pissed off about that, he started yelling at Pierce. And that seemed like the final straw. Nobody likes McDaniels there in Vegas. And I would say this if I'm the Raiders' new GM. Davante Adams signed a 5-year contract there last year. He has 3 more years on his contract. He's one of the best wide receivers in the National Football League. I'm not getting rid of him for my young quarterback. I'm sorry, Davante. You're going to stay and be part of this new offensive game plan.
Okay. And I get that, but I don't know if Davante is going to buy into that.
Well, then he could pout and sit out for 3 years. I'm not trading him.
Here's the thing, Brandon. I totally get what you're saying. And you're not wrong in your assessment either. It's just when you have a high caliber player like that, they don't want to be in a rebuilding or retooling type of situation. Whatever word you want to use there.
Can I say this though? If Vegas hits on the quarterback, if they go out in the draft, if they were to get a Penix or a Bo Nix, so we both think it's going to work almost immediately in the NFL. This is the most stacked quarterback draft class that we've had in the NFL, maybe in forever. I don't see, and we're going to get to college football here in a sec, I don't see a lot of butts on the board here this year. So in Vegas, it's on the coach and the quarterback. They're not in a rebuild. Yes, they're in a tough division, but every team in the AFC has a freaking quarterback. Go for it. Make moves. The worst team in the AFC this year outside of Vegas may win like 5 games. I'm serious.
Okay. I would disagree that every team in the AFC has a quarterback because it doesn't seem like the Patriots fully believe in Mac Jones.
Okay, but Mac Jones is more capable than, say, Desmond Ritter, who got bent. I mean, look at the AFC versus the NFC.
Yeah. I get what you're saying.
You get what I'm saying, though. So,
Yeah.
if New England's the worst team in the AFC and they have the best head coach ever and a capable quarterback who I think is better than people think, but he's in a terrible situation with no wide receivers. Like, come on, dude. You can't take the AFC.
True. But again, when are teams going to learn that it doesn't work to just skin the Patriots alive? It doesn't work that way. It just doesn't.
We got to get to our best games of the NFL in week 10. And Josh, I got to tell you, I did not get to 5 games this week. This was this may be the most abysmal calendar the NFL has ever put out for its week 10 slate. I really only got to 4 games, them being the Browns and the Ravens, the Niners and the Jags, the Texans and the Bengals, and the Lions at the Chargers. I do not see any other game really. Maybe Denver, Buffalo, Denver get back on track. I doubt it. Don't get me started on Vikings Saints. I really don't want to watch the Saints, who needed 5 turnovers off Tyson Bagent to barely beat the Bears. They're not good, and they're going to somehow win the worst division maybe in the history of football. Like, we have a lot of bad quarterback play. It's mostly in the NFC, which we knew going into the year, and I told you this was going to balance itself out. But I'm excited to see C.J. Stroud against Joe Burrow. I'm excited to see Jared Goff and the Lions out there probably torture Brandon Staley in that Chargers secondary. I want to see how Kevin Stefanski and Deshaun Watson and the Browns figure out if they can beat Baltimore. And obviously, I want to see how San Francisco and Jacksonville both do, both coming off their buys. But this is a brutal week for the NFL schedule-wise.
I know. Like, you look at week 9, there was a great slate of games. You know, we had Miami, Kansas City, Seattle, Baltimore. At least we thought that was going to be a great game going into it. You know, we had Buffalo, Cincinnati. So those were 4 games that, and of course, Dallas, Philadelphia. I apologize for leaving that one off. So 3 of those 4 games, I would say, hit the mark. Of course, Seattle, Baltimore did not. But, yeah, I look at this slate of games for week 10. You know, I would say 49ers, Jaguars is probably number 1 for me this week. Because both teams are coming off of their bye. We both agree that San Francisco is a really good team, and they're going to figure it out. And Jacksonville looks like they're starting to put it together offensively with Trevor Lawrence, and they're playing really well. So that's a really intriguing game for me. I would say Browns-Ravens is number 2, because maybe the Browns can close the gap on the Ravens in the AFC North. We'll see. But you look at the matchup historically, the Browns defense cannot stop Lamar Jackson.
That and the Browns offense actually struggled for most of the game against Arizona. The fact they played Clayton Tune is what made that game interesting.
Yes. That's why I'm not reading too much into that Arizona game. Like, the Cardinals are 1-7. They were playing a rookie quarterback, whoop-de frickin' do.
I'll tell you what, Kyler Murray against Taylor Heineke this week, everybody. Can't wait. Bryce Young against Tyson Bagent for the battle of the number 1 pick, which the Bears have both picks. Can't wait.
Yay! So I would go 49ers, Jags, Browns, Ravens. I agree with you about Texans, Bengals. I guess Lions, Chargers, but I mean, that game doesn't do a whole lot for me.
See, I think that has the potential to be a shootout, and I want to see our Staley coaches late. I think that is a late game because we done it for the last 2 weeks. Brandon Staley's job was on the line. If he lost to Tyson Bagent or Zach Wilson, he was getting fired. Let's see if he can pull one off at home against the Lions coming off a bye. That'd be a big win for the Chargers.
It would be. You're right. I I agree with you about Saints Vikings. Like Josh Dobbs, it's a nice story, but I still don't think the Vikings are like a legit playoff contender.
See, I'll push back on that because of their schedule. Do you see who they're playing coming up? It's all bad teams. It's literally all bad teams. Chicago, Green Bay, Denver. Like they have a chance to roll into Detroit week 16 for a battle for the NFC North. They have a chance here to almost run the table.
Yeah. Following this New Orleans game, they've got Denver, Chicago, Vegas, Cincinnati, Detroit at home, Green Bay at home, and then close the season at Detroit.
Like prior to those two Lions games that are the two of the last 3 weeks, outside of Cincinnati, all those other games are winnable. Minnesota's got a chance to go on a streak here.
Yes, but their chances definitely took a nosedive when they lost Kirk Cousins.
Oh, I agree. But listen, the Saints are going to win the NFC South because that's the worst division in football history.
Oh, good God, yes.
But nonetheless, I think we both agree there's not a lot to pick here for Week 10. So let's move on. Let's talk Statement Saturday in college football. Mr. College Football Man, your Penn State Nifty Lions are taking on the Michigan Wolverines, and everybody hates Jim Harbaugh. What else is on deck for us?
So not only do we have Michigan, Penn State, we also have Utah against Washington. I want to see how Utah responds after getting absolutely blasted by Oregon. We also have Alabama at Kentucky, which Kentucky could give Alabama some problems. We have number 10 Ole Miss at number 2 Georgia. That could be a very interesting game. Michigan State at Ohio State. Ohio State's going to roll them. But then we have at 10:30 Caleb Williams and the USC Trojans going up to Eugene, Oregon to take on the Oregon Ducks. We thought at the beginning of this season that USC could be a playoff contender and that Caleb Williams was going to run away and win his second consecutive Heisman. That hasn't been the case. This could be another statement game for Bo Nix and the Oregon Ducks. Right now, I would say Michael Penix of the University of Washington is the favorite to win the Heisman because he beat Oregon and Bo Nix. But if Oregon goes out and beats USC, I think that puts Bo Nix, not that he was ever left off the conversation, but I think it closes the gap between him and Michael Penix.
So we did not talk about this last week because we were not on the air, and I think that we would have already been off the air by the time this was for weeks. But the ever-forgiving committee came out with their first college football rankings of the season. And the committee, in my opinion, which always gets it wrong, got it wrong again. Because
by the way, the new rankings are coming out in about 10 minutes.
So Ohio State was ranked number 1. Georgia was number 2. Michigan was number 3. Florida State was number 4. And then Washington 5, Oregon 6. I've been saying it on this show for, the past 3 or 4 weeks. I still believe Michigan is the best team in the country. Until somebody beats them, and again, I get it, they haven't played great. This is going to be their first big test against Penn State. They are blowing people out. And I think some of it has to do with, even though the committee won't admit it, the sign-stealing scandal of Jim Harbaugh, which, whatever. I told you this a couple weeks ago. I believe if Michigan was 4-4, no one would care about it. I think that Michigan, again, is the best team in the country. I do think, because of their resume, Ohio State number 2, and I think you can put Washington, Oregon 3-4 right now. Florida State somewhere in there at 5. Georgia at 6. I think Georgia's in there more on reputation than anything, in my opinion. I cannot wait, and I hope, and I'm sorry because I know you're a Penn State fan, but I've been saying this for the past few weeks. Please give us in whatever order it may be. Number 1, Michigan. Number 2, Ohio State. Both teams undefeated going into that final Saturday in November. That would be the most highest rated college football game maybe ever, or especially since the USC Texas National Championship game in 2006.
I agree. I'll say this about the Penn State Michigan game. As much as I would love to say Penn State's going to upset Michigan this week, James Franklin has shown that he cannot win the big game when it comes to facing both Ohio State and Michigan. He had a golden opportunity to beat Ohio State a couple weeks ago in Columbus when we didn't feel Ohio State was necessarily great. We felt like they were really good, but it felt like this was the year Penn State could get them, and they didn't. So why am I to believe then that Penn State, even at home, can beat Michigan? I don't.
Your only chance is going to be, can you stop Michigan's run game? Because as good as J.J. McCarthy has been this year, and he's shooting up draft boards and mock drafts, we even talked about him in the conversation. He's going to be a first-round quarterback as well in this year's NFL draft. Michigan is so good on the offensive and defensive line. You can make an argument Michigan in that way is the Philadelphia Eagles of college football. They just beat you up. They are dominant up front on both sides of the ball, and that's the key. You have to stop their running game. You have to force J.J. McCarthy into third down, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 passing situations. That's the only way Penn State has a shot. Drew Adler will probably play better at home. I think it's a closer game. I think Michigan's in their first fight of the year. I'm going to say 30-23. I think Michigan wins by a touchdown. Would I be surprised if Michigan blows your team out? Unfortunately for you, no, I wouldn't. But I think Penn State, because they're at home, gets up for this game. It's Michigan's first real test of the year, and that's why I think they come out a little bit sluggish in the first half, put away Penn State in the second half.
Hey, I mean, I'm not setting myself up for disappointment because even though I'm a Penn State fan, I don't think Penn State's going to win this game. I genuinely do not. I want to believe they can, but they haven't shown me that they can step up and win those big games when they need to. Like I said, they had an opportunity to do it a couple weeks ago against Ohio State, and they didn't. So why do I believe it's going to be anything different? But you're talking about Michigan and the sign stealing scandal and everything with that. Earlier today on First Take, which they were at Stephen A. Smith's alma mater, Winston-Salem, an HBCU. But Stephen A. Smith said that because of this whole sign stealing scandal situation, whatever, Michigan should be banned from the CFP this season.
No.
Yes, he said that.
Yeah, okay. Let me try to put this in the best analogy I can. It may not make sense.
I'm not saying I agree with him. I'm just telling you that he made that
doesn't
statement.
make any sense. That's like you running or that's like your kid running a stop sign and then telling you that you have to go to court even though you didn't do it. You can't punish a team for allegations. There's no proof that they did this.
I mean, from what I've heard, the FBI has gotten involved in this, and the rest of the Big Ten.
Oh, whoop-de-doo, the FBI got involved. That doesn't mean anything. You got to have it on paper. Okay, Michigan did this. Boom, we're going to suspend them for 10 years. If they come out and say, oh, yeah, that's like Donald Trump coming on and saying, oh, the election's rigged. We have no proof the election's rigged. Happy election day again, everybody out there. There's no proof it was rigged. There's no proof it wasn't rigged. It's what people say. It's hearsay. We got to get concrete evidence on this. And until then, and by the way, Joe Quiet made a great point the other day on the Herd. the NCAA's got to go through this, and then their bylaws basically says they have 6 months to make a decision, and it will have no impact on the college football playoff this year.
Again, I'm not saying it was the right or wrong thing for him to say. I'm just telling you that's what he said.
Okay, well, that's Stephen A. Smith for you. I want to move on. We're getting to the NBA, Josh, because while we were away, the Los Angeles Clippers, doing a desperate Los Angeles franchise that's in the basement of Los Angeles too. They go out, they acquire another ball hog to go with the one and only ball hog, Russell Westbrook, to go with the guy that doesn't talk, and Kawhi Leonard, and to go with the guy in Paul George, who's a very good player, not a great player. There's a team bunch of ball hogs. They're very small. This is not going to work. I can't wait to see James Harden and Russell Westbrook fighting for the ball in the backcourt again. I don't know who thought this was a good idea, and I love Coach Lou and what he's done with the Clippers, but it's like, why? This has disaster written all over. I'll give you an over-under of 3 months until Harden asks out again because it's not working out with the Clippers, just like it wasn't working out with the Sixers, just like it wasn't working out with the Nets, which I defended them on the Nets because Kyrie was a disaster case in Brooklyn. But nonetheless, you get my point.
Yes. This move smells of desperation for the Clippers because they want as much star power on their team as they can, knowing that they're opening their own arena in a couple years, and they want to say, hey, look at us. We have Paul George. We have Kawhi Leonard. We have James Harden. We have Russell Westbrook. That's what this move signals to me. But think about what James Harden has done. He's forced his way out of Houston to get to Brooklyn, forced his way out of Brooklyn to get to Philadelphia. Now he's forced his way out of Philadelphia to get to the Clippers. He has burned so many bridges, it's not even funny.
You're nice about it. I'm going to give the not PG version about it.
Go ahead.
James Harden got fat and quit his way out of Houston and ate Oreos until he demanded he got traded to Brooklyn. Then he said, Kyrie Irving's a freaking basket of knuckleheads. Get me the hell out of here. And Brooklyn said, we'll take Ben Simmons. And Brooklyn said, let's do it. And Philly said, thank you for taking that knucklehead. We'll take James Harden. So then James Harden decides, you know what? I don't like Doc Rivers as a coach. Let's fire him. And Daryl Morey says, yes, okay, I'll agree with you. We'll go get a new coach. And then Harden says, I want out anyway. And Joel Embiid's looking around going like, what the hell am I stuck with? I got Tyrese Maxey, but I ain't got nobody else really on this team. That's the version of James Harden. And now James Harden's gonna look around at this Clipper team and go, Russell Westbrook turns the ball over at 100 miles per hour about 8 times a night. Kawhi Leonard doesn't speak, and Paul George only plays about 50 games a year. What the hell am I doing here? And by the way, who on that team outside of Zubac is going to rebound?
Also, who on that team is going to play defense? Because
well, if Kawhi and Paul George are pretty good defenders. I mean,
but Kawhi has suffered countless injuries, so he's not nearly the same defender he was.
I'm Kawhi Leonard. I am a robot. When I play, I make every single shot, but I only play about 10 games per year.
Are you sure you're not Anthony Davis?
Well, at least Anthony Davis has a personality and doesn't drive a 90s truck.
Fair enough. But him and Kawhi have the same issue. But anyway, talking about James Harden, I mean, he's still going to get into the Hall of Fame because he's just that great of a player.
Are you kidding? So here we go. How does James Harden deserve to be a Hall of Famer? The basketball Hall of Fame, they think Russell Westbrook the Hall of Famer. What have these guys ever done to be the Hall of Fame? They're not winning players. They're stat machines. They're not. James Harden is not a winning player. I'm sorry, a great player. He's one of the best offensive players we've ever seen. He didn't put a wicked defense in 15 years.
Hey, I'm not saying he should go to the Hall of Fame. You just know.
You said he deserved to go in the Hall of Fame. Those were your words.
Let me rephrase then. He's going to end up in the Hall of Fame, whether he deserves to or not. Let me say it like that.
He is, because everybody is going to end up in the Basketball Hall of Fame. Can we talk about the man that I really want to talk about? Somebody who pretty much already has his name etched in the Basketball Hall of Fame if he gets healthy. That being Victor Wembanyama. I called this man 3 years out. I said, everybody in the world, go on YouTube. Look up this man's highlights from France. He's Giannis Antetokounmpo with a three-pointer at age 19 that it took Giannis 7 years to develop. Victor Wembanyama has turned Greg Popovich's old Spurs, old broccoli Spurs, back into entertainment again. He's scoring 38 points a night with Kevin Durant next to him on the damn floor. This man is arguably a top 10, top 15 player in the NBA right now. And he's got a kid's body. And he's 19 years old. And he's dominating games more than LeBron did at age 19 when he came in for the Cavs. He's not afraid to go inside. He's not afraid to shoot free throws. He has handles like a point guard. He is everything you want in a generational superstar talent that I think if the Spurs had enough talent, especially now that they have a play-in, can we please get Victor Wembanyama in the play-in tournament this year? Please, please, please. This kid is special. I'm telling everybody, if you have not watched this kid, Victor Wembanyama, go back and watch highlights, whether it's in the NBA or not. The kid is next. He is the next great NBA player. He's going to be better than Giannis. I'm just going to say it. I think he's going to be a little bit better than what Nikola Jokic is. I think Giannis will turn into like what a Kevin Durant, what a Kobe Bryant was, but he won't be LeBron James. This kid, for the next 15 to 20 years, is the new face of the NBA.
Wow. You made some very bold statements there by saying he's going to be the next face of the NBA.
I've been saying it since he was in high school. The kid has all the traits to be the guy, a lot like LeBron had all the traits when he was at St. Vincent St. Mary.
Okay, so doesn't this feel so San Antonio Spurs, though? Because think about it. They get a generational player in David Robinson, and then they go and get Tim Duncan, and we know what happened. They go on to win 5 championships. This just feels so appropriate for the San Antonio Spurs. They get this once-in-a-generation player, and, you know, they're not going to end up with a player like Tony Parker or Manu Ginobili. But if you can get role players around him, similar to what the Spurs did with Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili, you can build something there. Do you kind of get what I'm saying there?
And in this day and age of the NBA, especially in the Western Conference, the old Lakers, the old Suns, the old Warriors, in the next 3 to 4 years, those teams are going to be bad or heading towards decline or maybe terrible. So give Victor Wembanyama a couple years. Give San Antonio a couple years to build the roster on this kid. And I could see, almost every year, him and Jokic battling for the Western Conference crown. I know a lot of people love Luka Doncic, but Luka is a really good player to me, but he doesn't play defense. He's a turnover machine as well. He barks at the refs a lot too, which I don't like. Wembanyama just doesn't care. Wembanyama will get hit. He'll block shots. After his first game, which, you understand it's your first game ever in the NBA, you're going to be a little bit nervous. After his first game, he settles in, and I'm sorry, he looks better than 90% of this league.
Okay. Well, he's going to be center stage tomorrow because you know where he's playing? The world's most famous arena, Madison Square Garden, against the New York Knicks. on ESPN. So
Oh boy,
everybody,
Madison Square Garden. You mean that dump that hasn't been a big game in about 20 years outside of one playoff game when they beat the Cavs?
yes, but he's going to be center stage tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to that. But
Well,
there's another game on Wednesday that I'm even more interested in.
there is, and I can't wait to debate you on it. So I'm going to let you go first because I have a take you're not going to like, and I want you to just go first.
So I am very interested in this game tomorrow night. It is Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and the Golden State Warriors going up against Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, Nikola Jokic, and the defending NBA champion Denver Nuggets. This is the first of 4 games they will play against each other. They'll also play in Denver on Christmas, which that's going to be an even better matchup. But the reason I'm so interested in this is because you've got Jokic against Steph, the last 2 finals MVPs. You've got, of course, Warriors Nuggets, the last 2 NBA champions. Everybody still thinks the Warriors are going to be a factor in the Western Conference this season. And the Nuggets are not going anywhere. They're the favorite, I would say, to win the finals right now, coming in the Western Conference. They're the Western Conference favorites, I would say. So this game just has it all for me. You've got star players. You've got players who are coming of age in Jamal Murray. I'd like to see Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody take that next step for the Golden State Warriors and kind of become that next generation when Steph and Klay move on. But I'm just so interested in this game.
So, as I said earlier in an earlier episode of Championship Rings, in my humble opinion, there were nights last year that Jamal Murray was just better than Nikola Jokic on the court. Jamal Murray is already a star. That's my opinion. But my take on this game, on a scale of 1 to 10 of how excited I am for this game, is a -9.
Damn.
And I'm gonna tell you why, Josh. The date on today's calendar is November 7th, 2023.
Oh, here we go.
You know when, in my mind, the NBA season starts?
Here
February
it comes.
12th, the day after the Super Bowl. That's when the real NBA season starts. Christmas Day now is dominated by football. Nobody even watches the NBA on Christmas. We always most watched games last year on Christmas ever because nobody cares about football. The NBA is a April, May, June sport. As much as we all love watching our favorite teams, for us it's the Cavs, for others it's Denver, Golden State, Lakers, whoever your favorite team is. We know the NBA is literally a 2-month sport. You can make an argument it's 3 months. You want to expand it to March. The Lakers redid their whole damn team at the trade deadline and made it to the Western Conference Finals last year. I mean, this game, in retrospect, you could say, oh, for seeding purposes down the line, I guess it could matter theoretically if they're tied at the end of the season. But these 2 teams are going to be so different in their experience and their battle-tested and their personnel and what they like to do and how they play as a basketball team. You can take signs from November, December, January. Here's what we're good at. Here's what we're bad at. Here's what we're going to need to work on. But the difference in the NBA is you have a 7-game series in April, May, and June. Outside of what Miami did last year, usually the better team in each series wins the series. Usually it's about what? Veterans, mid-range jump shooting, and good defense, and stars taking over when they're healthy. I know the NBA is going to try to limit load management, which they absolutely should this year. And the in-season tournament, to me, is a gimmick and a disaster. I don't even want to talk about it tonight because I have so many feelings on it. The NBA knows they're behind the NFL, which is why they're trying to get more big games here early in the season. But 4 or 5 months down the line, no one's even going to remember that this game even took place in November. The Cavs played Golden State twice this year, and it's, in the last Sunday and then next year, 6 games. November, that's it. So when these two teams play in March, maybe it might mean more. But November, I'm sorry, I got nothing for you.
I respect that opinion. I really do. You thought I was going to hate it, but I really don't because I totally understand where you're coming from. I guess for me, it's just like I love to. From one of the things that I love about sports in general is creating my own storylines um, for, for games, whether like it's storylines that are already there or if it's Timberwolves Cavaliers, for example, seeing Carl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert go up against Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, or
Yeah, there's definitely interesting matches within the game. For me, when you look at earlier in the NBA season, like we talked about Victor Wembanyama, James Harden, it's more about the game by game basis. It's more about the long term storyline as opposed to when we get into March around March Madness time, when we get past the trade deadline. That's when to me you look at and you say, because right now Boston and Denver look amazing. The Cavs do not look great right now, as an example. That could all flip by the time we get to March.
and and I totally hear you, but to still get this early season matchup of the last two NBA champions, two teams that we expect to be there towards the end of the season in the Western Conference playoffs, it's a good measuring stick game, if nothing else. Like you get to see where you stack up against another team you could see in the Western Conference Finals.
And I understand that to a point, but again, I think it's too early in the season for that.
And that you're, and at the same time that I understand what you're saying.
All right, well, we got to get to our last topic of the night, that being the Rangers. They ended up winning the World Series in 5 games, which we both predicted, by the way, them knocking off the Arizona Diamondbacks. And to me, Josh, I said this on Brandon's World the other day, the only real takeaway that I have from this World Series is in baseball, now we've seen it. If you can have, a young team that loses 100 games 2 years ago. You get the right manager, you get the right free agents, you get the right develop. You can win very quickly. Texas was the best team in the AL West and arguably the AL for 161 games this year until Houston stole it from them at the end. And regardless of who they played in the World Series, they absolutely deserved it because out of the two teams, Texas was the better team.
Yeah, I think Adolis I think Adolis Garcia was going to win World Series MVP until he got hurt. That's not a slight against Corey Seager by any means. I'm totally all right with him winning World Series MVP. But Adolis Garcia was playing like he was from another planet. But think about what the Rangers did. They went undefeated on the road in the playoffs.
That's so hard, even in baseball. And this year's playoffs was weird because so many road teams won games. There was not a lot of home teams that won games this postseason. But in game 5, what the Texas pitching staff did, Arizona obviously was throwing a no-hitter into the 7th inning. Arizona had multiple chances with multiple runners on base in each inning up to like inning 6 in that game 5 to make it to 3-2 to force a game 6 back in Texas. And the Rangers pitching staff was able to shut them down. That is what won them, the World Series in 5 games.
Yes. Think about this though. You've got all these teams going out and hiring these young managers and stuff, kind of like what you were saying earlier in the NFL about going out and hiring these young offensive-minded head coaches. But who won the World Series? It was Bruce Bochy, a guy who's been there before. He was part of that dynasty in San Francisco. I mean, think about it. Last year, who won the World Series? Dusty Baker. So
That's a good point. And baseball is the sport of tradition, even though it's leaning more towards analytics. It is the sport of tradition.
That's true. I would like to see the division series, I believe it is, go up to 7 games instead of 5, because oftentimes I feel like when you get to a game 5, it doesn't feel like the proper ending to a series. It feels like you're getting cut off before the series really gets going, if that makes sense.
Yep, I agree with you. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up there. We thank you. I see some comments pouring in the comment section. We appreciate everybody that tuned in tonight to this great episode of Championship Rings. Josh, we had a blast tonight. We've been off for 2 weeks. I think, we text on what of it during the week. You text me more than I text you. I think you wanted to know my take before we hop on the air. I give you a little snippet. I ain't giving you the whole thing so that we can spar here on the air. But great show tonight. Absolutely love you, buddy. Can't wait till next week. We're breaking down all things week 10 in the National Football League. Anything that comes up in college football, the NBA, professional wrestling, all that as well. We thank you as always. Again, you make sure to go on our social media pages. Check us out. You can follow us on Twitter at Rings Champion, Instagram at Rings Champion, Facebook at Rings Champion 216. Subscribe to us here on YouTube at Championship Rings 216. And with that, Josh, the floor is yours.
Yes, make sure if you haven't done so already, I'm going to steal this from my own YouTube channel, but make sure you punch that subscribe button like a UFC fighter and hit the like button with the Judas effect, courtesy of Chris Jericho. And let's build up championship rings. I love doing this show with Brandon every week. It was annoying taking a week off last week, but we're back and let's keep doing this damn thing, as Max Holloway said in a couple of his UFC fights.